Hi everybody, I'm Lacy Schoen, founder and CEO of Real Women, Real Success. We're continuing this week our series on women competing in the workplace, and today I'm visiting with Kate Klimow. Kate is the Assistant Vice Chancellor of Government and Community Affairs for UCI. Thanks for... Zot. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
So I want to start with some stats and get your reaction to them. I've been really focused on these stats recently. Women are 50% of the population. They're 57% of college graduates, which you probably know, and that number's growing.
Absolutely.
A little bit. Yet women are only 5% of Fortune 500 CEOs, 14% of government CEOs. We only get 2.7% of venture capital. And that means that men get over 97%.
That's right.
The most stunning stat that I recently ran across that's sort of humorous if it wasn't so drastic is that there's more CEOs, corporate CEOs in the United States named David than there are women CEOs.
I know, I've read that recently too. It's
that's
fascinating.
Crazy. So what do you think is the reason for this?
Well,
all the world's problems, Kate.
I'd love to. I think some of it is sadly tradition and what we're comfortable seeing. There's still that perception that the men are leaders and that women are still trying to break the glass ceiling. We go overboard when a woman has reached that spot, which we should celebrate. But on the other hand, part of me feels like we should accept it as, of course, a woman is a leader. Of course, a woman is a CEO. And I know we're going to get into this, but I think it makes it every woman that fails as an executive, because women do, just like men fail, it's like she's representing the entire history of women, humanity. And a man fails, and it's like, well, all right,
just him. Bob
did a bad job.
Right.
We'll move on. There's seems to be so much more weight put on everything that a woman does, whether it's from us ourselves, that we put too much on ourselves, carrying the weight of women with us in every decision, or externally. So there's a lot of things mixed up into it. I don't think it's just one answer, but it's still pretty amazing that in this day and age, we really should be more evenly balanced than we are.
Right. Okay, well, I want to stay on competition, but you brought up a really interesting point that I want to hone in on for just a minute. That idea that women's faults are more magnified. I wonder sometimes your thoughts on this. I've read a study out of Berkeley that talks about women applying for higher level jobs, and that, or running for office, let's say. A woman won't run for office nearly as readily as a man or apply for a job. And the study was, what does it take? The men will apply for a job if they feel they can do 60% of the qualifications, and a woman is 100%. So we're holding ourselves back in that regard, and some of it makes me wonder if some of it is us.
I think some of it is us. I think to put a more positive spin on it, I think we're more aware of our strengths and weaknesses. And I think because of that, we think, well, I don't have all the skills I need to do this job, so I better not apply. And generally, broadly speaking, a man will say, "Oh, that sounds like an interesting job. I'll apply."
Yeah.
And they don't really worry if they have all the necessary skills. I've had conversations with elected leaders, women leaders, and Marion Bergeson, who recently passed, was a wonderful, fantastic role model and leader, and would give advice. And what she talked about in encouraging women to run for office is to, sounds trite, but just to do it.
Yeah.
They're having a care for your community. That's what you need, and an interest in learning and having a thoughtful process. You don't need to understand the intricacies of labor agreements and how a municipal water system works. You'll learn that just like a man will. But there is that sense of confidence and courage. Generally speaking, I think women think, well, I don't know enough. I need to learn more in order to prepare myself, instead of saying, I have a pretty terrific set of skills. I'm a smart person. I can learn that. I'm going to make that leap.
Exactly. I love that you said that. I call it being certain without being confident, because men are both confident and certain,
Right.
even if they don't have all the education or skills that they need. And I think women need to learn to be confident without being certain how they'll do the job. They can figure it out. Can't women always figure things out?
Yes.
I mean, we're queen of that.
And we do. And I think there is something to the old saying that you fake it until you make it.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, there are studies that show just by standing in a power position with your feet out and your hands up, and you do that for I can't remember, 2 minutes or something before you go into an interview or some big important decision, you get that rush that, okay, I've got this. And whether or not you do, you've given yourself this lift, this emotional lift. And I think that's something that women need to embrace more, that we just go out there and do it.
Yeah,
and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And we all have the networks we need to give us the other kind of very practical support. But
absolutely. And I don't know about your experience, but that support for me has been more often men, particularly earlier in my career, than women. So back to the competing, do you think we hold each other back? Not you and me, but you know, women.
There's always a case of that, and men do it to each other too. I think for me personally, where I've seen it more is I haven't been in that neck
and neck.
Thank you. That. Thanks for supporting me and helping me out there. I haven't been in that direct competition to women going after the same job, at least that I'm aware of. Where I have seen it is more this feeling that there's a zero-sum game, that if I'm moving ahead, if my boss recognizes something that I do, or the community recognizes something I do, then peer women say, oh, well, then I must be diminished in some way.
I'm losing ground.
I'm losing ground. Instead of saying, well, that's great. Here's my peer. We have the same title, different places, but she's being recognized. That's great. That means that I can be recognized if I do good things too. So for me, in my experience, that's where I see it more. Just it's this. It's not. I know sabotage happens, and I know undermining happens. It's very real. But I think it's more this feeling that if you're succeeding, I'm receding, and then I'm just going to do the little things to.
And there's only space for one at the top.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think you're right. The more subtle competition is what a lot of women are experiencing. One of the things that I have experienced is when a woman leaves a meeting and takes the opportunity with someone one-on-one to make a comment about, maybe a negative comment about a woman who was in the meeting, without maybe directly going to her and giving her the benefit of the advice. And it almost sometimes comes across as, I'll take her down a notch a bit, I'll even the playing field, and then I'll elevate myself. And there's actually some science behind that behavior, but I think it happens almost unconscious or subconsciously sometimes. And that's part of the reason for these videos, is just to bring awareness.
Yeah.
Do you think, one of the things I wanted to ask you, I have a friend who was in the Marines and now she teaches leadership.
Wow.
And she admitted to me, and I was so thankful for her honesty, and I know I've done this too, she said there were times where I realized I was competing, and when I realized it and asked myself why, I didn't know why. Have you ever been in that circumstance? Have you ever found yourself doing something and questioned yourself and said, oh my gosh, why am I doing this?
Of course. I think actually I do it more often now, because I think I feel much more secure in who I am, and not just in my career and in my daily work, but just I'm older and I've had more life experience, and so it's easier. It's always hard to examine yourself, but it's a little bit easier at this age to say, wow, that was uncalled for. Why am I doing that? Why am I saying those things? Why am I doing the same thing that I've just said that women shouldn't do? So it's something. It's like anything. It's a muscle you have to train.
Right.
It's a. We get negatively reinforced in our lives through things that happen at school or on sports teams, or whatever it may be, the experiences that we have, and you have to unravel. But the way you unravel is to be confident enough in yourself that you can look in the mirror. And
Maturity
recognize
is a great thing.
Yes. Can be a bummer at times, but yes, it leads to better places.
No more fun anymore.
Yeah.
Well, you sort of started to answer my next question, which is what you think we can do about it. And what I'm hearing you say is be self-aware, look at yourself, see if you're putting out some of the behaviors that you yourself don't enjoy.
Right.
Would you say?
I think it leads to a better life all the way around. I think not to get too political and societal, but I think all of us would be well served to take a look at ourselves and how we treat each other in whatever way that may be, and do a little gut check. Maybe. I mean, the golden rule still applies, right?
Sure.
Do unto others as you'd like yourself, and that rules in the workplace and home and in our social engagements as well.
Absolutely. So before we started filming, you were talking about a book you were reading. Can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. It's called How Women Decide, and I can't remember the author's name.
Okay.
So look it up. It's a fascinating book, and actually there's a group of us that are reading it, men and women. And it talks about some of the studies that you've mentioned, and it really looks at the process of how women decide and what holds us back. Why can you feel confident about a presentation you're going to give, and then you get into the room and you start doubting that the information you have is correct? Has nothing to do with being prepared. It's some of these subtle clues that we pick up on as women, or being in a room full of men around a table, and why, if you're the only woman, why you might not speak up, but if there's another woman in the room, you might. And so it's a book that talks about our thought processes, but also about the subtle little things that can undermine our feeling of strength and what we can do to overcome that as women. And I'm really so grateful that in this group that I'm reading it with, there are men too, so they understand how a woman thinks and comes to a decision. And it's not that one way is better than another, that men are better or worse than women. It's just we do have different brains, and we do go through a thought process differently. And for men leaders to understand that women may look at something in a different way, to take a minute and say, maybe she hasn't given me an answer because she's actually thinking it through.
Right.
And I should be conscious of how these strong women on my team are, and not just think, well, she didn't answer, so she must not know. That's just like a woman.
Right.
So it's
You mentioned in that story a little bit about group dynamics, and I have always been a little bit on the fringe in the fact that I think there's good components to the good old boys club. Not for us as women, but when you observe how men support each other almost just gutturally, and it's something that women don't enjoy amongst each other. It's a camaraderie that doesn't exist. Do you think that there's value in women building sort of, I call this the professional besties club, or some way of understanding how to support each other spontaneously? Well,
there's always room for support. I think you're right that the aspect of the Old Boys Network is that a man will support another man, based on his pedigree and his connections, and if his personality isn't great, well, you'll deal with that in another way. I think women can use that kind of support network, if not for the hands up or the job opportunities, but just having a network to go to say, how did that presentation come off? I thought I was fine. Or frankly, to have women say, I heard this person talking about you and saying this thing, and I'm telling you so you're aware, so you can counter. Not to be mean, this is what people are saying about your back, but just so you're aware of your perception or your reputation or what's being said, because knowledge is power. Right. So I think having women of different levels and different industries, having that kind of network so you can get feedback about who you are, but also to get that support, so that you feel more confident in the work that you're doing and the decisions that you make and the whole package that you're putting out there.
Right. One of the things that I'm a big fan of is publicly praising, because I think the Good Old Boys Club does that really well, whether it's true or not.
Right.
I spent, as you know, 30 years in nonprofit management and always worked for boards of directors. And the whole group dynamics, watching it around a board table, before I left my last job, there was a stunning example of how people want to go with strength and how men do this very naturally and women don't. And it was an issue on the table where there was a vote and there were 2 men for and 3 women against, but the men won. And that's because of the way they conducted themselves around the table with each other. Very much camaraderie based. It was very apparent they talked ahead of time. They passed off the talk to each other. They support each other. They didn't say the same things. They may have very well disagreed, but they weren't going to share that. And they actually won the vote when there was a majority of women who were for it. When the women talked, they were very disjointed from each other. It was apparent they hadn't talked. One of them felt like she needed to disagree with the other 2, and so there wasn't strength on that side of the issue. So I just think people want to go with strength, so I feel like women could use each other so much more effectively by just saying, hey, let's publicly call out our good points or where we do agree. Right. I think sometimes we think we have to disagree to stand out.
Right.
And it doesn't always serve all women well. Have you seen that at all in any of your interactions? I know you work with a lot of people.
I do.
And you're on a lot of boards.
I am on a lot of boards. I think there is, we wouldn't be having this conversation if there weren't still these examples and we weren't all still experiencing these things where you feel like as a woman or a group of women, you're dismissed because some man rolls in and lays down a statement. I have a pretty big personality, so
big and wonderful.
Well, yeah. Thank you. Thanks for supporting me on that one. So I am not afraid to push back, but I actually can think of one board meeting where the men were kind of making quips. So there's a community, and the mayor was really working on trying to get more women to join commissions or apply for commissions. And was having a reception and kind of a working session on encouraging women to run for office and apply for boards and commissions. And the chamber was just discussing how to promote this event, and some of the men were kind of grumbling about, no, why do we need that, and making those old ball and chain kind of jokes. And I was so mad, but I didn't know how to cut that off without sounding exactly like
what their perception is.
Right. And what was interesting about that is the other women at the table were also feeling the same thing. And so now we're creating a new committee as part of the chamber to promote women leaders, and
nice.
We'll just play them at their own game.
Yeah. So I think that's exactly right. And
right.
I think that's sort of what I'm hoping women will start to realize is build your club.
Right.
Build what the guys have.
Right.
And sort of not viciously, but fight back. Not with ill feeling, but come together and fight back. You don't have to agree to do that.
Exactly. And you're never going to change everyone's mind, and some of it does take time. But there's a way to do it in a much more positive way. Instead of trying to shame someone or shut them down, like you said, build your club of besties in whatever environment that may be, and start making that positive change.
Nice. Okay, well, I have one last question for you before I get to it. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you thought about or wanted to share on this topic?
No, because you're so well prepared.
Okay, great. Then I'll ask my parting question, because I came to do these series of interviews because as I was out talking about activating your 5 and 8 female strengths, I've heard from audiences how prevalent it is that they're dealing with female competition in the workplace. And some of it just happens organically. I don't ask for this feedback. So it makes me know that it's not just me that experienced this in my career. So I wanted to try to have some interviews with successful, seasoned women who can give some of the folks who are newer to the game some advice. So for some of the folks on my list that want to hear what you have to say, what advice would you give them if they find themselves in a competitive situation with another female?
Well, I think some of it is looking at yourself, starting with yourself, and seeing how it is that you're interacting with that person. I'm not saying they're right or that you're doing something wrong, but sometimes just the way we communicate can trigger these competitive attitudes or feelings. Maybe they're feeling threatened or attacked and you don't mean to, but it's the words you're using. So first you look at yourself and say, how better can I approach the situation? And then that's also useful in assessing yourself to know that you are in a position of strength. No, I am right in this situation. I am doing the right things and I'm doing them for the right reasons for me or the department or moving things forward. And then I think it's reaching out and finding those people that can help you, if not with this individual, but then making sure that the broader network knows that you're doing the right things for the right reasons. So it's kind of a summary of all the things that we've talked about today, but it does start with yourself, and then it's reaching out in circles beyond that.
Do you think there's value in reaching out directly to the person?
Well, of course.
Scary, I know.
Very scary,
Yeah.
and asking, what have I done? I think I'm trying to do this, but it seems to be coming across in the wrong way. And that goes back to just being a good person.
Right.
We're not communicating well. What is it something I've done, or is it how I'm approaching? How better can we work together?
Right.
I mean, you may not get a straight answer, but at least you've tried.
Yeah. Well, what I love about that, in one of my prior interviews, one of the women said, I think it's a matter of character. And what you're conveying there is a way to build character. You build character when you have the difficult discussions.
Right.
But I think all women will end up benefiting if more of us can start to have those conversations. So.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that we have them face to face and not behind each other's backs.
Or texting.
Right. Yes.
The phone.
Make a direct call.
Yeah.
Don't leave anything to chance.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, I want to thank you for spending time with me today. I really appreciate it. I know
Absolutely.
you're busy, so thank you.
Well, it was my pleasure. Love being part of the process.
Okay. Well, thanks for watching today. If you're not already part of the Besties Club, look for the link down below to join, and we'll see you next time.